welcoming our wonderful speaker tonight. And I'm particularly proud tonight because I get to introduce not only the speaker, but the musicians for tonight, and they're all from my community. So what a treat. I'm going to start by just opening the space to consider our beautiful earth and the way that we work together as a human element on this earth. And I pray that this talk is a seed that is being planted, and each one who listens to this, no matter when it is that they hear it, are taking these seeds of wisdom and they are planting them. And we are growing a world that works for all. And I just go right into gratitude, knowing that this is how it works. When we hold that vision and hold that intention, we change the world for the better. So I'll release that prayer and introduce with joy our musicians for tonight. Dave Finch on piano has been the music director at Unity Community of Central Oregon for almost 21 years. He graduated with a degree in music from the University of Portland, including a year in Salzburg, Austria. His training included an emphasis on tenor sax and bass clarinet. Since college, he has focused on piano, writing, arranging, and accompanying, and has played in numerous bands around the Pacific Northwest, spanning genres like blues, soul, rock, and jazz. Dave released a CD from the heart in 2001 and is working on a brand new CD currently, a solo piano project called Moment. Dave is a pianist in Anna's band, Sweet Red and the Hot Red Billies. And he is just this beautiful human being who shows up week after week after week for 20 years and plays amazing music and makes everybody sound great who sings with him. So I'm really happy to have Dave here tonight. And Anna Thedford has been singing since she was a little girl. She studied music off and on through vocal lessons and school choirs through the first half of her life. And after taking a 10-year break, she came back to music and singing through Unity Community, where she found her soul connection to her voice again. She even has her counseling businesses called Lark Song Counseling. So she's really into the music, and she is the lead singer in a rockabilly band, Sweet Red and the Hot Rod Billies, for the last 6 years with her best friend, Dave Finch. So I think this first song that they're going to do is one that Dave and his wife Kalinda wrote together, and I haven't heard it yet, so I'm really excited to hear it. Take it away, Dave and Anna.
Actually, both songs we're doing today are written by my lovely wife Kalinda and I. This is the one that we've been using Sundays in our service, part of our prayer song. It's called No, as in I know.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing the other song at the end. And for now, I'm going to introduce Sylvia Hayes. Sylvia is a writer, speaker, teacher in the areas of personal spiritual development and economic evolution and the living world. She is a minister in training with Unity Urban Ministerial School, and she's the spiritual leader of ACT, the Social Justice Environmental Ministry for Unity Community of Central Oregon. She is founder and CEO of 3E Strategies, Sylvia Hayes Enterprises, and The Rethink. She is on the faculty of the Sustainability Department, College of Agriculture, Oregon State University. Sylvia is the author of When Life Blows Up, a guide to peace, power, and reinvention. She currently serves as an elected member of the Unity Worldwide Ministers Earth Care core team and on the board of Unity Community of Central Oregon. Sylvia has led a very unconventional life. She started out as a cowgirl and farm kid, surviving deep trauma, winding up on her own at 16, working as a heavy equipment operator, and playing scholarship soccer to pay for becoming a first-generation college graduate. Later, founding successful businesses, traveling to and doing business in over 20 countries so far, being appointed by governors and even serving as First Lady of Oregon. More recently, moving through an intense public shaming to the stage to deliver a widely viewed TEDx talk. She is a major dog lover, especially of Tessa, her recently passed 90-pound lap dog, and Freya, her current giant snuggly dog. She is a beekeeper, river rafter, hiker, and unabashed tree hugger, even though she was raised a rough little redneck, and she says that part with a smile and great respect. So Sylvia, talking about sacred economics, creating a more beautiful economy.
Thank you, Jane. I really appreciate the intro, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate this conference. And thank you everyone for making it to our last session of this conference. I'm so impressed. Before I dive into the topic of sacred economics and creating a more beautiful economy and world, I want to acknowledge the place that I'm coming from. I want to acknowledge this land. I particularly want to acknowledge the very resilient Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. In 1937, the Warm Springs people, the Northern Paiute people, and the Wascow people came together after having been forced off of nearly 10 million acres of land by colonizers in the 1800s, and they formed this confederated tribe. And although they did not willingly give up the land, they've been quite a force here since. I want to acknowledge them and their resilience, and I want to acknowledge the land itself that I'm lucky enough, and some of us here are lucky enough to live on. And I just want to affirm in solidarity and unity that we all move forward, thriving together, healing and restoring the wrongs that were done to peoples that are being done, and healing and restoring this land together. And Jane, given your introduction to this session, I'm going to change up my order a little bit on my talk. I was going to share this later, but I want to open with it. It's called Our Mother's Prayer, and it was written by Dennis Winnichko, who is a new friend of mine, introduced to me through a couple of Unity people who serve on the Unity Worldwide Earth Care team. Our mother, whose name is Earth, hallowed be your ground, and your skies and your rolling seas. Your gardens thrive, your spirit alive, through woodlands, streams, mountains and plains, everywhere. Grant us this day our needs for tomorrow, and refresh us with your living waters. Forgive us our mistreatment as we would forgive those who harm you. Lift us from negligence and deliver us from greed. For yours is the home and the beauty and the life that sustains us. And we would love, respect, and care for you now and ever, ever forward. And so it is. And I'll try to, I don't know how to get a hold of that. Dennis is not, he's mostly a hard written, hard copy kind of guy, but I'm gonna try to get a copy of that for everyone. I did post it on our Earth Care Facebook page a while back. Okay, there is no doubt that we have been living in some trying times in our Northwest region and beyond. I mean, here we've had the incredible heat dome, fires, and going back and forth and seeing the effects of those, incredible tension around racial injustice, an explosion of people experiencing the crisis of houselessness in the midst of a freaking pandemic. It has been a lot. And I just want to acknowledge that I think many of us have a little bit of apocalypse fatigue going on. And I just want to take a moment to let you all know, a talk about economics, a talk about these deep subjects that we've been in that I find tremendous, tremendous hope. And I also want everyone to take a moment to just appreciate yourself. Appreciate yourself for keeping on, for being here, for carving out space for doing this work together. Breathe and congratulate yourself. I'm going to tell a really brief little story. When COVID hit and everything, the first time everything really went into lockdown, I had a kind of unusual reaction to that. Yeah, I was nervous like everybody else and uncertain and whatnot, but I also had this real sense of excitement. And my gym was closed like everything else. So I was working out at home. I have a pretty small little home, and I had turned up kind of headbanging rock and roll dance music. And this is very unusual because my house is normally very quiet. I don't even play music very often, you know, and I'm shaking it out in the kitchen and doing push-ups in between, and my giant dog is sitting over on the couch watching me like, I don't think I want to get near that. And my beloved, my life partner, John, called. He wasn't here at the time, and he called, and he could hear the music in the background and could hear me breathing hard. Again, that kind of noise in this house is unusual. And he was like, well, wow, Sil, what's going on? How you doing? And I said, darling, I think I was made for the apocalypse. Now hang with me for a second, because I know that apocalypse is a scary word, but I'm a words person. When you look at the root of the word apocalypse, it actually means an unveiling, to uncover what was hidden. And I think that's what's going on right now. So much of these conference proceedings have been so exciting to me because we've been talking about addressing and stepping into systems that have been around a long time that need to be unveiled. So that's what I really want to speak to tonight. And I absolutely promise you, I know that economics is called the dismal science. This is not going to be a dismal presentation. And I just want to, really say that I think each of us here alive at this time right now, and particularly those of us who know that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, we're here right now in these difficult apocalyptic times for a purpose and for a reason. The confluence of these difficult events that we're experiencing together show us just how connected we are to every other human being, to the non-human beings, and to this living earth. We affect one another. And that can be challenging at times, but I happen to believe that that is also unbelievably hopeful and an enormous opportunity. We have an opportunity here in these times to unveil the sacred. And so in this talk, I do want to, this whole conference has been about unity and our openness to connection and diversity. And I do want to open it a little further and take our sense of connection and appreciation of diversity out to all the non-human species that we also share this magnificent planet Earth with. Tonight, I'm going to talk about sacred economics. And I will say, I believe nearly every big issue that we are facing, climate change, entrenched poverty, loss of species, even some of the institutionalized racism, the caste system that we've been talking about, all of that to a large degree they are symptoms of a flawed economic system. And sacred economics is about unveiling those flaws, facing our assumptions, like we in New Thought do, and changing course. It's about leaning into the opportunity to redesign economies at the personal, community, and global scale so that people can thrive, so that more of us can work and live with dignity and do work that is more meaningful. And in so doing that, so that we can become a restorative force for nature, for all of creation. I want to stress, polling has shown for years and years that when you ask Westerners particularly, what is the economy? You know, how do you feel about the economy? It tends to come back that we think of the economy as like an act of God or a force of nature. It's something that is so big and so beyond us. But the truth is, it's just a set of systems that humans have created over time and that we shape and change all the time. Now I'm hoping my technology is going to work. I want to share. I have just a few slides to go with this, to this talk. I'm not going to have a lot of slides. Can y'all see that? So one of the beautiful things that's happening in my world right now as I come to the tail end of my ministerial classes and I'm giving more unity talks and things, it seems like my work just tends to inspiration and leverage happens from all over the place. This is a quote that I came across just a few days ago from Charles Fillmore's book, classic book, Teach Us to Pray, which is one of the texts that's in the prayer and reflection class I'm in right now. Man lives in two worlds, the world of cause and the world of effect. The world of effect is at present a complex tangle. Panaceas without number are offered. There is but one panacea that is the installation of an economic system in which human greed will be eliminated. So I just want to put it out there that taking on economic evolution is right in Unity's wheelhouse. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit with slides because I'd rather be more talking with you. Before I really get into the content tonight, I just want to let you know what we're going to do. I'm going to kind of do tonight in modules because it's a lengthy time period where we can have some Q&A and interaction in between. I'm going to give a brief overview of the current economic system that we're living in and working with. Then I want to consider some really important questions that don't often get asked. I'm going to give some information about the new economy and the sacred economy that is already so much more underway than people realize, but we just don't hear that story very much. And finally, I'm going to wrap with some direct practical actions that we can take as persons and as congregations. And so before I launch into the first real bit of content, I just want to ask you guys to think about, I'm going to give you like a minute of quiet to think about your answer to, or your feeling about, what is the economy for anyway? What's its purpose? And what do you want the economy to do for you and for our world? So just think about that just for a second. Okay, we'll come back around to that a little later. And before I launch into the next bit of sort of laying out a little bit about the current economic paradigm that we're in, are there any burning questions at this point? All right. We are, some of the key components that we're looking at in our economic system, a lot of it's about a narrative. It's about the story that we tell ourselves. And I'm going to question some assumptions, and I don't think many of you, I think many of you already know some of this for sure. If you have discomfort, whatever, bring it up, or just sit with it for a moment. I want to question these assumptions. I'm going to go back to share screen. Oh, there we are. So I'm going to put this slide up for a second, and then I'm going to take the slide off and talk through just a little bit. These are what I view as some of the most significant components of our current economic paradigm. It's based on limitless growth. It externalizes costs and benefits, treats corporations as people. We use GDP as a metric. I'm going to talk about that. Monetizes the commons, and it commodifies animals and nature. You put all that together, and I would suggest that we are in an economics of separation. So I'm going to briefly take each one of these and break them out a little bit. So our current narrative, how have you ever heard an elected leader say we need to slow economic growth? No. Our current narrative is that in order for our economy to be viewed as healthy, it has to be on a limitless growth trajectory. Growth in consumption, growth in sales, growth in purchase, growth. It is all about limitless growth. It is our story. And we live in a paradigm that says, here's the economy. It's the be all and end all of our reality. And here are environmental issues. They're a subset within the overall economy. With all due respect, that is ass backwards. We live on a planet. We cannot live without the planet. We cannot have a functional, healthy economy without a healthy planet. Our environment, we see that over and over, the collapse of fisheries. When our Northwest forests were overlogged, and the reaction from that and the harm that that does to local economies. What we're seeing right now with the severe weather events that just decimate local economies. So one of the big things is to shift the narrative from the environment is a little subset of that you have to think about when doing the economy. The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment, of the planet. And I want to put forward through this talk, and this is where we as individuals and organizations we really have an acupressure point. We have a leverage point. I would now argue that the single biggest existential threat we're facing is an addiction to consumerism. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit throughout this whole talk. So the second point, very quickly, was externalized costs and benefits. We currently pay for things, we pay prices for things that don't reflect their true costs or their true benefits. So the best example I know of is the cost of a gallon of gasoline is, I don't know, $3.75, $4 per gallon at the pump. The reality is, when you factor in the costs of the subsidies given to fossil fuel industry, taxpayer-based, the cost of using military to protect many of those reserves and facilities, and just the cost of basic cleanup, like of oil spill, not even factoring in climate change, leaving that out of it. You factor that in, and there's been plenty of research done, we're paying over $10 a gallon already for a gallon of gas. We just don't pay it at the pump. We don't pay the actual true cost of the embedded energy of bringing a carton of yogurt from one coast to the other when you actually have local options nearby. So that's one of the other pieces that I just want to make folks be aware of. And we also don't factor in externalized benefits. So if you're a strawberry farmer and someone comes in next door and they set up a beehive operation because they're going to make honey and they're going to put their hives out on crops, those bees are automatically going to be going into your strawberry fields, and you're going to benefit from an increased productivity. But that's not going to be, that bee farmer is not going to be paid for that. That's not going to be factored into the equation. So this is just, we're at a point where we've got to have a more holistic, systemic look at all of these issues. We're in a system that says corporations are people. They have rights and they have limited liabilities. What seems like lifetimes ago, when I was first embarking on my career in this field, I got together this movement to have the state of Oregon declare an Energy Independence Day. It was the day like after the 4th of July. And as part of that, the governor signed on to it and all. I thought it was very powerful at the time, didn't really do much, but it was a cool concept. And as part of that, we put forward, my little organization, creating a Bill of Responsibilities to go along with our Bill of Rights, right? Corporations don't really function underneath a Bill of Responsibilities, yet they're considered to be people. And here's the one that I really want to leave with you. Many of you people are running organizations, you're entrepreneurs yourself. There's a business management saying that we manage what we measure, right? What we measure in this global capitalist system, we measure things by GDP, gross domestic product. And I'm going to take a little bit of time with this. The GDP, we say that the economy is doing well if the GDP is going up. The economy is not doing well if the GDP is coming down. Now, the GDP is a relatively recent development. It was developed as we were coming out of the Great Depression. President Hoover was working on this, and the guy who developed it was a guy named Simon Kuznets, and I'm going to come back to him in just a second. The GDP was tremendously useful originally because prior to that, we had no way of knowing which aspect of the economy was growing or which wasn't, or where were jobs available, or any of that. And as we headed into World War II, the GDP became super interesting because we were able to see where we were able to better analyze the economy, where there was growth, where there were resources, where those resources could be redirected into the new challenge of dealing with this global conflict. However, Simon Kuznets, who created the GDP then, said, quote, the welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measurement of national income. Now, the GDP, it's important to note, all it measures is the amount of money flowing through our system, not whether that money is making us better off or worse off. So I'll give you an example. The GDP measures the amount of money spent to educate a child as just exactly as positive as the same amount of money spent to keep a kid in juvenile jail. That's how the GDP works. So Kuznets said, we need to be asking growth of what and for what. And I just, to close this little section, you know, growth for the sake of growth, rascally Western novelist Edward Abbey said, is the ideology of a cancer cell. That's kind of what we have our economic system based on. Another piece of it is we've monetized the commons. So not too very long ago, we didn't have to pay for childcare. We had communities come together to provide it. You know, not too very long ago, we didn't have as much stuff, and we actually helped people move their things around more often. One of the positive things I think about COVID is that we went back to that, at least for a little while. Many of us did. You know, I got to know neighbors I hadn't known before on my block, and we took better care of one another for a time. We stopped assuming that everyone could afford to pay for all of these things. And I want to give you one little personal example of the commons. I live in Bend, Oregon. We're one of the fastest growing, hottest in many senses of the word, communities in the nation right now. I live at the end of a cul-de-sac. My house is modest. It's just under 1,000 square feet. Love it. I have neighbor nirvana here. But I have this really cool commodity in my little property because I have my little house, my awesome yard, and then I am what they call, I'm zoned so that I own a small little side lot next to me. It's on the same property, but I could legally build another home over there, small home. That was the original plan for this property because it was going to just be an investment. I never dreamed I would be here this long. Never dreamed I would love it this much, but here I am. The original plan for this property was we were going to build a small place on that adjacent lot, either rent it out for a while or whatever, and then eventually flip the whole thing for more money. Well, before any of that could happen, I met my neighbors. Actually, my dog at the time met my neighbors. And they had come over and asked me if they could, they had a landscaping business, and they had asked me if they could park their landscaping equipment on my little vacant lot. And I was nervous about that at first, right? It's kind of like, wow, what if they break down the fence or something? I didn't know these people, but my dog liked them. So I thought, you know, I really should go with this. That turned out to be one of the best moves I have ever made. They are now non-DNA family. They have given so much more to me than I ever have given back to them. And when I look at that, when I look at the trade-off between the benefit the financial benefit I might have gained from building and renting that place out, that side lot out, to the benefit gained from the relationship building, there's just no comparison at all. You know, that's something that I did not commodify. It was kind of like divine intervention right there. And then the final piece of this system before I shift into the next piece is we've commodified animals and nature. And I don't want to go into this too terribly much, but I would encourage all of you to read the book Sapiens. I'm actually going to include a resource list. I'll include a link to a resource list I've got on my website. Sapiens gives a really pretty hard-hitting look at the toll that our commodification of animals, particularly livestock animals, has taken. And I'm going to give you guys a stunning statistic, and this is going to be the very last of any potential kind of doom and gloom, really. But right now, for those of you who haven't heard, there's a lot of scientific talk about we're now in the Anthropocene. We're at the point where the human species has actually become a geological force on the planet. If you take from a biomass, from a weight of biomass perspective, all of the humans, all of our cows and pigs and chickens and poultry, we make up 96% of the mammalian life on Earth. It is a staggering reconfiguration of the diversity of the planet. So this is just something that I don't feel in integrity if I don't bring up. This is something that is a system that is going to need to be fundamentally redesigned. I'll leave that right there. You know, speaking of animals, as we moved through this COVID situation, and as the vaccines were coming out and whatnot, and it seemed like, at least before Delta hit, it seemed like the physical threat had really reduced. People and experts became more and more concerned about mental health impacts of this. And I've been worried about one of my neighbors. I mentioned I'm in neighbor Nirvana, but I've been worried about this one. I came out of my house the other day and I saw her, and she was like bent down talking to her cat. And I mean, she was talking to her cat like she really thought that cat was talking back. It was, you know, it was really odd. I thought it was odd, and I ducked back into my house. I told my dog about it, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. I just wanted to make sure y'all were still awake. Y'all were still with me. So I'm going to shift over to another slide that I want to show you, because another part of the story that we keep being told is that COVID broke the economy. I just want to point out, before COVID, more than 50% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck at or barely above the poverty line. And most of those people are working long hours and multiple jobs just to pay monthly expenses. You could ask yourself, was that economy working for them, or were they just working for that economy? And I also want to point out here, we talk about the poverty line, but the current poverty line in the US is $26,200 annually for a family of 4. If we were to really ratchet that up to what's realistic, our poverty line would be much higher than that. Income inequality has been off the charts. We have basically accepted as normal, a part of our normal, we've accepted a kind of Robin Hood society, you know, where wealth is systematically distributed up to higher income levels. And all of this is based upon chewing up ecosystems and wildlife at an unbelievable pace in the pursuit of limitless growth. It should, I've written about this. I wrote an op-ed that actually got a lot of, I think like 1 million views over time, but it should come as an existential wake-up call that when COVID-19 hit, it shut the economy down, or really slowed it down, and the planet responded positively. The planet rebounded, our airs cleared, our waters cleared, wildlife started to show up again, and all of that took place because we pushed pause on what we consider to be the normal economic system. It was at that point when COVID hit that I launched the organization Jane mentioned, the Rethink, which has a mission of, let's just not go back to normal. Let's not let that be our vision. And this is where I think Unity and New Thought folks have so much power right now because we're always pushing for, and I shouldn't say pushing, we're always affirming and working toward a new and better normal for everyone. You know, I've heard it said that if we don't ask the right questions, the answers don't matter. And you can take that to our own inner work. If we're not willing to ask ourselves the deeper questions, then we're just kidding ourselves. And we can take it to right now. And I want to give you and we can take it into the outer work, this kind of work. I want to give you just a couple of examples. I can only see a few of you on the screen, but I'm sure most of you or many of you heard about the huge cargo tanker that got stuck in the Suez Canal. Everyone? Okay, I'm seeing some of you. You know, that thing, take this into mind for a second. That one cargo tanker is 1,300 feet long, and it holds 20,000 40-foot containers filled with stuff. And it's just one of thousands. And when it got stuck in there and hundreds of these big things filled with stuff got stuck behind it, all the media and all the analysts and everyone was asking, oh my God, how do we get it going again? How much damage is this going to do? Nobody was asking, should we be moving that much stuff on ginormous, difficult to control vehicles across our irreplaceable oceans in the first place? A story that got very little coverage was there was I think it was Washington Post reporter who was there covering it. And they were standing, you know, there was a bunch of people watching it, locals people. And one of the little local boys from the area, he said, well, why don't they just take one of the containers off? Maybe it could feed our village. You know, so it's like this, the story of stuff is one of the most important stories going today. Give you another example. Probably fewer of you heard of this, but I don't know, a couple months ago, there was a ship that caught fire and burned in the coast off of Sri Lanka. Beautiful, quite pristine Sri Lanka. And it turned out that it was filled with a lot of toxic chemicals and nurdles. I learned this covering this story. Nurdles are the little plastic pellets that we use that make up all the plastic stuff that we use. And it's the biggest environmental disaster Sri Lanka's ever experienced. Now, not only has it caused unbelievable plastic damage and chemical damage of the environment, Sri Lanka had a super healthy local economy based on local self-sufficiency and fisheries and whatnot, and all of that is now seriously harmed and set back. Those people are hurting. All the coverage about that was, oh my goodness, how are we going to get this cleaned up? That's a good question. How much damage is this going to do? None of the coverage was on, should we be shipping plastic nurdles through some of our most pristine environmental regions left on Earth? And who should be responsible when mega corporations cause a situation that knock hundreds or thousands of local people out of their own livelihoods? So those are the kinds of questions. I know I'm probably putting a burr under everybody's saddle pad, but those are the kinds of questions that I would like our unity movement more and more to be considering. The old normal was not working well. So as we've heard, let's try, vaccines are coming, whatever, let's get the economy growing again, let's get back to normal. We need a new and better normal. We need to be asking better questions. I'm just about to wrap this piece. We need to be asking, what is the economy for anyway? Growth of what and for what? And how much is enough? And I want to say here, I am super sensitive that I speak to these issues from a wealthy place. I'm personally not wealthy by American standards, but I am by world standards. Probably everyone here is. So I am sensitive to that. We don't have an issue, though, on this planet of not having enough for all humanity. It's a distribution issue, and it's a systems issue, and it's a consciousness issue. We need to be thinking about, the COVID vaccine right now. Should we all be getting boosters? Or should we be maybe coming together as a global community, right? I know that I'm not going to have answers to all of these things, but these are the kinds of things that I hope that I can be part of, getting our awesome unity global community taking on more often. I would actually say that asking the right questions, the hard questions, is a form of spiritual activism. And I think it's one of the reasons we all are here right now. There is hope for new and better norm. And this economic system that is the backdrop for so much of what we do is not an act of God or a force of nature. We did invent it over time, and we can reinvent it. So with that, I would like to take a pause and open up for any Q&A, and let me take a look at the chat. And how many of us are there? We probably could just, why don't you just speak up, and if we speak over each other, then we can go to raised hands. No questions at all?
Oh, Sylvia, this is Philip.
Hi.
Hi, it's good to see you. This is stunning, by the way. I'm so thankful that you're tending the store, so to speak. You're tending the planet. And yeah, I suppose I could come up with 1,000 questions about what's the next step for this and that. But I will say, I just wrote down, unity is a way of life. Unity is a way of life. I mean, unity is an educational movement. What are we educating for? For a better way of life, for everyone. I mean, it's in our mission statement. And I guess one of the questions as spiritual advocates is how to speak a spiritual language that meets people in their heart and doesn't get lost in their categories of definition of religiosity, because we're not there right now. We don't have a new language. We don't have a new language for what it means to be a spiritual person, truly. And so maybe that's a task for coming. It is a task. You're just blowing my mind. It's so amazing. It's so amazing to actually be in a spiritual conversation or at a spiritual conference, and to talk about how many animals and humans make up the mammalian population percentage on the planet. I mean, it's a spiritual question.
It is a spiritual question.
It's a spiritual question. If spirit is about living in harmony with all life, then all of it is a spiritual question. Everything is a spiritual question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm taking up space here, but I wanted to tell you that I want to let you know that that you're my huckleberry. Thank you.
I'll be a huckleberry.
You'll be my huckleberry.
You're never just taking up space. And you know, one of the notes I made in my own journal earlier today was when Lisa Davis was talking about her work in around anti-racism, and she said racism is not a political issue, it's a spiritual issue. And I wrote in my journal then, environmentalism, the protection of our living world is not a political issue, it's a spiritual issue. So I think that's something we can hook onto. And in a really cool synchronicity that happened earlier today, I've attended this whole entire conference, except I checked out for 90 minutes today because Unity Worldwide does these occasional what they call conversations or webinars, and the one today was on forming a spiritual action team, which we're right in the middle of doing at my local congregation. And it was fabulous. That recording, I will make sure Rachel gets it because it'll be available soon. But we talked about this. We talked about the difference between political and partisan, and how to frame, how to harness people's deep desire to take action on issues in a way that can actually build our unity movement. So that, and of course, in a way that our unity movement can help change the dial, because we need to, I feel strongly called that Unity and New Thought has a real role to play in putting our fifth principle, which is divine action, right action, into play in helping to catalyze the changes that we want to see in our communities and our world. And this time of disruption is all about opportunity to make change. It's not necessarily all about being easy, but yeah, it's not political, it is spiritual. Protecting the living earth is a spiritual, it's in the realm of spirit, it's not in the realm of politics. Which doesn't mean, for those of us who are inclined, being engaged in policy influence isn't part of that. Spiritual politics, maybe. Maybe I've just made a new term right there. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to go on. And if at any point anyone does have a burning question, I'm happy to be interrupted, and you can pop a hand up and probably.
Jane has a question.
Okay, cool. And again, I should have mentioned that earlier. Go ahead if you have a question as I'm going along, because I'm hoping not to take us all the way to 8:30, and I'm about to shift to all the cool stuff that's actually happening in this category. But pop a hand up and Kevin or Jane or someone will see it. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering, I know that our media has the if it bleeds, it leads approach. And so we're not getting the whole picture. Like when you're talking about Sri Lanka having this really healthy, sustainable economy, that it's news to me. And I know that you're plugged into a lot that's going on globally. So maybe I'm just setting you up for this next section that you're going to talk about, but that's what I want to know. Like, what's the bigger picture around the world? And maybe even in our world, just that isn't getting reported well.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going.
Okay, great.
Cool. So if no one else has anything, I will go forward. So I started off by saying we're telling ourselves a certain story, right? And great segue, Jane. The mainstream media tells a story, and it's all a pretty much partisan variation of the same story. We need a new story, and I want to share this quote from cultural historian Thomas Berry. It's all a question of story. We're in trouble just now because we're in between stories. The old story, the account of how the world came to be and how we fit into it, sustained us for a long time, shaped our emotional attitudes, provided us with life purpose, energized action, consecrated suffering, integrated knowledge, and guided education. We could answer the questions of our children, but now it is no longer functioning properly, and we have not yet learned or built a new story. How many of you have some challenge answering some of the questions of your children right now? I want to point out that the root, I'm a words person, the root word behind economy is the same as behind ecology. It's eco. And the Greek root of that means home. Home. The economy really should be about making the best of our home here on this planet at this time. And long before COVID hit, for a few decades, actually, there has been an increasingly robust and growing new economy movement. You can call it sacred economy, you can call it new economy, there's solidarity economy. That has been my professional career for going on 30 years. And I just want to note, to Jane's point, this isn't a story that's told very much at all in mainstream media. One of the things that I have done, and I should add this, I will add this, I'm going to make a note to myself to add this to the resource list. I have become very intentional about adding positive and more diverse media sources. Yes Magazine, great example. Reuters, there's so much more positive momentum underway than what we hear about. There's a new economy coalition here in the United States. It's been around for quite a long time. Hundreds of members, not just individual members, businesses. There's a whole entire B corporation movement for businesses who are saying we are going to help shepherd in a restoration economy. Well underway. The Post Carbon Institute right here in Oregon, Post Growth Institute right here in Oregon, but with a reach far beyond that. Shoemaker Center for New Economics, Massachusetts, New Economics Foundation in Europe. All of these places are sources of information and sources of actual on the ground shift that's happening. And these links to these are in the resource link that I'll send to you. Donut economics is one that's caught a lot of traction. Economist Kate Raworth, she's got a very widely viewed TED Talk on this topic, and it's basically saying we need to move to an economic model where in the center of the donut, everyone's well-being, every human, their basic well-being is met. And then outside of that, there is additional growth and change and shift, but all of the other species and the planetary survival systems are adhered to. How do we keep it? Well, you know what? As we started to come out of COVID, I use that term loosely, the city of Amsterdam said, we're going to implement a donut economics model. They went so far as to say, we know this is going to be wildly challenging because we are a port city that brings in and ships out products that are extremely non-sustainable, but we're going to address that. The president of Ireland, not too long ago, actually said, we have to challenge limitless growth. He's one of the first major world leaders to come out and say that. There is tremendous momentum around this. I am lucky enough to have been able to spend some time in and do some work in the amazing little country of Bhutan, which is one of our youngest democracies. That was a monarchy, and the king said, you know, he eventually said all this GDP thing was happening. They were just starting, this little country in the Himalayas was just starting to open up to the rest of the world. And he said, you know, I would rather that my people were happy than productive. And they have become this little shining beacon of a country that is pioneering a different model for how to increase human well-being without it being just about growth that doesn't ask growth of what and for what. I could do a whole talk on that, and and I don't want to go too far. There's a newer movement called the solidarity economy. Am I showing you that slide? No. Wait a minute. The solidarity economy. One of the exciting things that's happening in the new economy movement is that more and more and more it is being driven and led by younger people and by people of color, and it is the greatest, in my 3-decade experience in the environmental movement and social change movement, it is the greatest integration of environmental and social justice issues we've yet seen. And I'm not going to read this. I'll take you just a moment to look at it, because these are some of the things that we can start thinking about in our own lives and in our own congregations. So, it mentions there like the barter economy, the sharing economy. One of the ideas that came up, I think it was earlier today, maybe it was yesterday in our conference, was a person leading a small congregation saying, I need better audio visual equipment. Does anybody have any? Building those kinds of networks, one of the big currencies of the future as we do move through an apocalyptic time. And I don't mean to say that to be scary. I mean to say that we're in new territory. Community is going to be currency. That's one of the things our Northwest region, any region, but our Unity Northwest region, we could actually create, I'm spitballing here, but we could create a currency. We have a sort of version of economy. Economy is not just what we think about in the macro stuff like GDP or even in going to the store. It's bigger than that. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I just also want to point out at this point, there's a book I have not yet read, but it's called Factfulness. My partner has turned me on to it. It's next on my list when I get past my last few ministerial assignments. But it points out that actually there's a lot of good in general going on in our world right now. And we as New Thought practitioners have a better chance of being able to actually lean into that truth, because we know enough to place boundaries around what we take in. I'm a news junkie, and I know enough to place boundaries around when I need to tune out of mainstream media. So Factfulness, but it talks about how if you really look at the overall trends right now, there's less war than there's been before. We have made tremendous progress on reducing poverty overall. The awareness movements that we are all experiencing and participating in right now, yes, they're uncomfortable. Yes, facing our white fragility but man, those are positive developments. All of that's at play right now. And I just, I feel it is so important to get that information as well. And I want to read you something. This is something that I'm working on. I want to read you just a couple short paragraphs of a vision of what I believe is a world that we could, with the tools we have right now, with the consciousness that's already activating and playing out right now, we could create this. Over the next couple of decades, we will come together as a global community to create more beautiful ways of relating to one another and to Earth. We will be living lives filled with meaning rather than just stuff. Each person's basic financial needs will be met. Jobs and work will be about how can I best give of my gifts rather than how can I make a living and scratch out paying my bills. Many people in the restoration economy will be employed healing the planet, cleaning up the oceans, reforesting the Amazon and denuded regions across the globe, supporting depleted species that are making spectacular rebounds. New industries will be thriving in the areas of mining valuable resources out of old landfills and figuring out advanced recycling processes. Vehicles and buildings will be powered by clean energy sources employing millions of people. Relocalization will be the new norm as we get more of our food and our products from people that we know, from local suppliers, neighbors, and artisans. We will feel more connected and our communities will be more prosperous and resilient. It feels so good in this time to know that all across the globe, Mother Earth is healing and species are thriving. We will have shifted from an economics of separation and perceived scarcity to an economics of connection, community, and love. Why not? And with that, any questions or comments before I have my wrap-up section?
Hey, Sylvia. Terry here. Thanks for sharing that vision. That's beautiful. I'm holding that with you.
Hold it with me. Hold it. Why not?
I think you should push the vision on the Northwest Region website. So it's in printed form where people could copy and print it out, because I, read and hold several visions for different things. And
I'll send it over. Thank you for that.
Also, Sylvia, there was a couple of requests during that larger slide that you had towards the end. Sorry about that. I usually have my phone off during presentations. It just happened. I'm hoping that you could take a copy of that particular slide and make sure that that's shared with your resources as a speaker. And if you have any questions about that, I can help you out.
Okay, cool. Maybe I'll just make the whole slideshow a PDF. I actually meant to share my resources link before this all started, so I probably won't have time, but I'll get it out to Rachel. I think I'll figure out a way.
That's how it's going to happen anyway, that it's going to happen after the fact, but yes. And yeah, so I just wanted to note that as we were going along.
Okay,
so
cool. Cool, got it. I'm taking notes. This is what I love about these things. We learn as much from, we are all co-learning all the time. Anyone else? Okay. I have just probably a few more minutes. I'm going to go directly into actions, and this will be in the slides that I send as well with the links and whatnot. Again, I just want to note, Unity's fifth principle is action. It's right action. And that's very alive. The desire for this, I feel, at least in the Unity circles I run in, that's very alive right now. And I just want to leave you with this again, a couple of other questions that matter, asking the right questions. What can you, as a spiritual being having a human experience right now in this wild, amazing time, do to be part of ushering in a sacred economy model, a sacred economy reality? What's yours to do right now? I want you to think about this as we go into ideas for actions. And how can your congregation or your organization be part of ushering in this new collective way of being. As Philip mentioned earlier, how can we expand the unity way of life to even more powerfully affect the collective? And I'm gonna pop back over to, and these things will definitely be in the resources link that I'm going to share with you. Here are some personal actions that matter. Question the status quo. Have these conversations. You don't have to have the answers, but when you hear someone rattling on about the importance of economic growth, just question it a little and ask better questions. And I would say I refuse to allow myself to be addressed as a consumer. I'm a frickin' citizen. I'm a human being. I'm a spirit. I'm not just a consumer. Less stuff overall. I'm going to have a funny little thing if I'm brave enough, going to share with you here in a second. Way less plastic stuff. So this is my current major cardboard soapbox, not plastic. Less than 9% of all the plastic that has ever been created on this planet has been recycled. And every single bit of plastic that has ever been created on this planet is still on this planet, except for the very small bit that has been incinerated. It doesn't go away. So the more we can curb plastic, and don't do wishful recycling. It's important to know what really can be recycled. This is a really significant action that individuals and congregations can take. And I'm going to hit on it again. Less meat. I am not perfectly vegetarian, but I will tell you, it doesn't get a lot of coverage because people don't want to hear it. But the biggest thing ever, as the International Panel on Climate Change says, the biggest thing people can do to reduce their own carbon footprint is to eat less meat, because it is such a carbon intensive industry, not even thinking about the suffering that happens. Fossil fuel is an investment. So, you know, we all are fossil fuel dependent heavily. I drive a car. I've done a lot of air travel, not lately, but we all are caught in this very paradigm that we're wanting to shift. And I think it's just okay to say, I know that. But for instance, I used to be a water skier, and I chose to give that up because I could no longer justify it for frivolity, right? I still do plenty of frivolous. I drive out and go camping, right? I'm just saying, let's think about fossil fuel as an investment. If I'm gonna travel somewhere and burn the fossil fuel, can I have it be an investment toward a positive thing that I'm going to do as part of that as well? Just something to think about. And localize. This is super duper important. And in fact, sadly, just the last night or the night before, I heard a news story that the big box stores are already kind of gobbling up all the products that they think people are going to want in the holidays, because supply chains have been so impacted by COVID. So local businesses are having a harder time getting those things. So I just would encourage us, if we've ever thought about and made a commitment to buying local, it's probably more important right now than ever. And then organization action. If you're an organization that has a congregation or a different kind of organization, if you have an investment fund, make sure that your investment fund is not investing in the damaging legacy industries. I'm really happy to report, Unity Worldwide, when they announced at the People's Convention this year that they were creating an endowment and what they were calling a sustainability fund, which meant a financial sustainability fund. I've been doing a little bit of work with UWH on creating an actual sustainability plan for them. They've done a lot. We had this well underway before COVID hit, and then it got delayed. But they got back to me and said, yeah, we're absolutely planning that as we create our investment and endowment fund, it will only be focused on environmentally and socially responsible investments. And there's so much information out there now about impact investing and socially and environmentally responsible investing. Waste-free purchasing strategies as much as possible. Do you know that for every can of garbage that we put out to be picked up at the curb, there are approximately 70 additional cans that are created along the way in getting that stuff made and to us? So the more that we can reduce waste, the upstream ripple effects of that are extraordinary. And this is what we've been talking about this whole conference. Let's use our voice. Let's use our platform. Faith-based communities and organizations are becoming more and more important in this massive movement to change course. We have an important voice. And calling up an elected official or a quote person in charge, they listen. It matters. The Earth Care, I've spoken so much at these conferences about Earth Care, but our Unity Worldwide Earth Care team, we've got lots of resources, and I've got a link to that in the resource link I'll send. Green Faith is another faith-based environmental and social organization that Unity could be more involved in. All of these, so Green Faith, Interfaith Power and Light, and Blessed Tomorrow, they're worth checking out on the internet too, because they've got newsletters that go out, they've got resources available. These are steps that we as congregations and organizations, and potentially, who knows, even as the Northwest region, could really step into collectively and have influence with. And I realize now, to make my point, I'm flipping around, I realize now I missed a really amazing graphic that I want to show with you guys before I totally wrap up. I'm a little out of, where do I grab him if I can? Well, doggone it. Oh, shoot, Kev, I don't know if you can save me, but I can't get to my GDP graphic, and I can't seem to get to I don't think I'm going to be able to get to the one I want to end with, the scrolling. Oh, wait, do you guys see that? Okay, cool. So that did work. So I just want to show you again, this is the trend between 1960 and now. This is the growth in GDP. This is the growth in world plastic production. This is the growth in species extinction. And this is the growth in global warming. So this is a metric. It's a fundamentally flawed metric. It served a purpose and did serve a purpose, but now we need to have metrics that incorporate in some of these other things as well. And Kev, I did the piece that I want to end this with, I don't know if you're gonna be able to pull it up, but the one that shows the scroll of organizations. Can you hear me, Kevin?
Yes, I can play that for you if you'd like.
Okay, not yet, but when we get there, because I just lost it where I had it in the dock on my computer. So when we get there, that would be awesome. And I also want to stress, Unity has we have a strong principle of prosperity. Moving to a model of sacred economics is aligned with our prosperity. This is not about just doing with less, sacrificing. It's really not about that. It's about choosing meaning over stuff. It's about realizing that often consumerism and an addiction to possessions is really about a level of spiritual starvation within ourselves and within everyone, right? It's the context that we're in. But there is a way to make this transformation. There is a way to move into a restoration economy that's not going to be about loss. It's going to be about gain. It's going to really be about prosperity. What is needed now is a new economic story. And part of that story is about reconnecting with one another better and with this planet that supports us. And I want to let you all know I'm actually I'm developing a Sacred Economics online course around this stuff. So if it resonates, when I get that done, when I get done with all my ministerial classes and can really have the bandwidth to wrap it up, which is right around the corner, I'll let you know, and would love for some of you to show that in your congregations. And just as I get really ready to wrap, Jane and Kevin are going to know that this is a really big stretch for me, because one of my hang-ups has been singing in public, but I'm going to sing you a little song. And I have a collection of these. We're coming up on the holidays, right? And I just shared that story that the big box stores are already ramping up for crazy levels of holiday consumption. We'll see how well I can do this. Slow down, ye frantic shoppers, for there's something we must say. If you would spare a moment, all the frenzy would go away. Consumerism has been telling us what Christmas means today. Now it's time we decided for ourselves, for ourselves. Yes, it's time we decided for ourselves. To some folks, Christmas means a time for gathering with friends, and enemies might take it as a time to make amends. But advertisers say it's for pricey gifts and consumerism ends. Now it's time we decided for ourselves, for ourselves. Yes, it's time we decided for ourselves. One more. Some people feel that Christmas is when Jesus makes a call. For others, it's a time to stress goodwill and peace to all. But Amazon tells us buy, buy, buy is just what meets the call. Now it's time we decided for ourselves, for ourselves. Yes, it's time we decided for ourselves and for our earth.
Yay! Nice job.
I have a whole collection of anti-consumerism carols that I've amassed over the years. I've never sung them publicly before. All right, I'm bringing it home. Those of us alive right now, we have a really amazing role to play. We have to play both the role of hospice and midwife. That is where we are. New thought is critically needed right now. Each one of you are critically needed right now. One of the components of nature that I love so much is a thing called an imaginal cell. I know many of you have heard this already, but imaginal cells exist within caterpillars and they lie dormant. And when a caterpillar finally gets the urge to go into its chrysalis, at some point, these imaginal cells activate. And when they do, the caterpillar's immune system actually attacks them. It attacks them as a foreign body, but most of the time it works right. And when it works right, the imaginal cells become so numerous that they kind of overtake the caterpillar's immune system. And at some point, and that back and forth between imaginal cells and the immune system accelerate the disintegration of the caterpillar body. And at some point, the imaginal cells become numerous enough that they sort of pop up and say, oh, wow, I'm actually a butterfly, right? Those of us doing this work, and Kevin, if you can tee up that last video clip, that would be awesome, because we are all imaginal cells in a massive chrysalis right now. As this starts, can you guys hear my voice right now? Okay, so what you're seeing here is a list of environmental and social justice organizations. This is a list that's just being pulled together. It currently sits at about 2 million, and it's not everything. If you were to start watching this list right now and watch it for 24 hours nonstop, you wouldn't be close to the end tomorrow. If you watched it for the next 24 hours and the next 24 hours, you wouldn't be close to it. If you watched it for the next 3 weeks and 3 weeks beyond that, you would not be at the end of that list. This is the largest social movement, the movement for a saner, more just, more beautiful world is the largest social movement we have that the world that has ever seen, that human history has ever seen. It is an unprecedented development right now. It is by far bigger than what it is trying to change. I just want to really thank the Unity Northwest region for this time, for this conference, for all that you've done, for having me be a part of it, for having me be part of our first Bridges of Justice program. We're living in a time of convergence, no question, of many, many, many challenges. We're also living in a time, as that last video clip shows, of incredible activity and consciousness toward positive change, toward creating a more beautiful and love-filled world. And I just, I want to point out that what feels apocalyptic to a caterpillar is actually when it's getting its ability to fly. It's its evolutionary moment. I just want to say to us, to Unity Northwest, to our movement, here's to being really powerful agents in creating pandemics of peace and pandemics of planetary healing and pandemics of kindness and love and unity. Peace out.
That was fabulous.
Thank you, Sylvia. Oh,
I just want to acknowledge you for all of the years that you have put into mastering this material, that you can speak with such eloquence and knowledge to us about. I mean, we all care about our earth, and you have really made it your life. And thank you. Thank you for that. So we get to go out with a beautiful song from Dave and Anna.
Thanks, Jane, for the. Just let me know. Are we live?
You're live. Mm-hmm.
Oh, she heard
We
me.
don't see you, but
Hi,
oh, there you are.
Hi, Sylvia. Good job, Sil. That was awesome. That was inspiring, and we're pleased to bring this all to a close. My beautiful wife, Kalinda, and I wrote this. She always says to me, when I'm like dealing with stuff, she always says, "Do you see the love in that? Do you see the love in that?" So this song we wrote, I think it's the answer to all everything, especially in this justice and eco world that we're talking about. I wrote this, and Kalinda wrote this about this. I choose love in times of whatever. Just choose love. And that is what this song is about, and that's how we wanted to end this conference. We hope you like it. It's brand new, by the way. So.
How can I get through this? The chaos and the pain, the darkness and sadness, sky full of rain. What do? You make a choice. What do I do? we choose love. Let us choose love. We're here to love. Sitting in the darkness, longing for light, the glimmer in the distance, comforting and bright. What do? You make a choice. What do I do? I choose love. We choose love. Let us choose love. We're here to love. Out of the stillness comes laughter and joy. Memory is calling for me to choose. I choose love. We choose love. Let us choose love. We're here to love. I choose love. We choose love. Let us choose love. We're here to love. We're here to love. We're here to love.
That was so, so beautiful. Wow. Yeah, thank you. You send us off with such beauty. Thank you to everybody for being here with us this whole time. And I encourage you to go out and share this with your friends, share this on social media. Don't let it end here. Let it change your lives for the better. And we'll see you next time.